Eu sou Renato Sérgio de Lima, diretor-presidente do Fórum Brasileiro de Segurança Pública. A gente a gente organizou duas atividades muito importantes para a discussão em relação à temática da violência de gênero, que na parte da manhã, durante quase todo o dia, um conjunto de cerca de 40 policiais participaram de uma oficina que foi conduzida pela Fiona Macaulay e pela Juliana Martins, na ideia de refletir sobre os significados da questão da violência de gênero e como que isso impacta nosso dia a dia, no dia a dia do trabalho, da atividade profissional dos policiais brasileiros. E na sequência, a gente aqui agora, aproveitando a oportunidade da presença do Marcon Dalebo, nós vamos ouvi-los um pouco sobre duas experiências importantes, sobre como lidar com a questão da violência contra a mulher e a iniciativa que o Lebo criou na África do Sul, também uma experiência muito interessante em relação como uma iniciativa da sociedade civil foi se constituindo numa política pública e como é que essa política pública vai ganhando corpo e envolve vários atores. Então acho que isso também é uma reflexão e isso nos remete a uma discussão que amanhã nós iremos lançar uma campanha com o Fórum, com o apoio do Instituto Avon e também com a participação do CAPG, lançará uma casoteca. Na verdade, a documentação de práticas exitosas, na verdade, o reconhecimento de práticas exitosas em relação ao enfrentamento da violência contra a mulher. E essa campanha, a gente vai lançar o edital para seleção de experiências que mereçam ser reconhecidas e mereçam ser estimuladas, documentadas e estimuladas. Então, eu faço um convite para que todos vocês entrem no site do Fórum amanhã, verifiquem o edital, participem na medida do possível, porque a ideia é incentivar medidas que de algum modo tenham impacto no cotidiano, não só das instituições, mas das mulheres brasileiras. Então, acho que isso é importante. A ideia é a gente tentar fazer com que essa atividade seja a mais informal possível, num bom diálogo, numa conversa entre todos os presentes aqui. Ela vai ser conduzida pelos nossos dois convidados. Como eu já disse, eu agradeço imensamente a abertura do espaço da agenda. Eles amanhã vão ter um dia intenso e mesmo assim estão aqui. O Marco acabou de chegar, chegou hoje, veio direto, ainda está sob o efeito do avião. Então, assim, a gente é uma oportunidade que a gente não pode desperdiçar. A Mafone, do Instituto Avon, vai ajudar a moderar, uma militante também de vários anos da causa e tem ajudado a pautar a discussão do envolvimento das instituições de justiça e segurança já há algum tempo também, e a Samira, nossa diretora executiva, vai fazer a coordenação por parte da instituição. Na verdade, eu queria só fazer uma saudação e já passar direto para o Marco, para que ele faça a intervenção dele. Muito obrigado.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. Okay, no, then I'm wearing ties. Good. It's extremely difficult to think with a noose around your neck. So let's get rid of this. So what I'd like to do is to share some ideas with you about your role as leaders. Often we just think of police officers and those working with police officers as, you uphold the law, you enforce the law. But I think actually it's important to see the role of our police forces as leaders in work to end violence against women. Let me just see, how many of you are police officers? Just so I know who's in this room. Okay, a few, okay. Whole bunch of you, good. How many of you do support work with police officers? Okay, a few of you, okay, oh, a bunch, okay. Okay, that's good, okay, good. Okay, so what I want to talk about, I only have a few minutes, but I'd like to share some ideas with you about how police officers can play a more effective role in working to end violence against women in Brazil. Okay? I've worked with police officers in many different countries. In Canada, where I live, I've worked extensively with our national police force and with police in other countries. So I'm very honored to be with you today. Well, I'm going to make some comments about men. I'm going to talk about some men who use violence in their relationships. But I want to be clear with you today. Even though I will be making critical comments, I do not think that men are a bunch of monsters. I don't think so. I don't think that men are idiots. No. I don't think we need to call in the politically correct police to straighten us out. No. But I do think that men should not be scared of powerful women. So what do I do? Why am I speaking with you? Well, I think because we need to do something we do not normally do. Usually when we speak about violence against women, we say, oh, this is a woman's issue. No, it's true. It is a woman's issue. But when we say violence against women, we are leaving out one important word, and the word is men. Because we are talking about men's violence against women. So it's critical that we talk about men. That in a discussion about men's violence, we make men visible. Men should not be invisible in this discussion. Now, the majority of men in Brazil do not commit acts of violence. That's true. A significant minority do commit acts of violence, physical violence, sexual violence, emotional abuse. But most men do not commit those things. But the problem has been that the majority of men have been silent. And because of our silence, we allow the violence to continue. So in my few minutes with you, I'd like to explore, first of all, some of the reasons why some men use violence in their relationships, and to understand how that will help us learn how we can do better education within the police force, in society as a whole, to work to end violence against women. In other words, whether we're talking about sexual harassment within the police forces, whether we're talking about relationship violence that may be committed by a police officer, or whether we're talking about violence that you as police officers go and investigate and arrest. Some of the issues are the exact same issues. So the question is, why do some men use violence in their relationships? Now, I think it boils down to this. It has to do with power. You know, when you think about it, think about some of the most violent societies in human history. Think about slave society in Brazil or the United States. There was a society with a minority with my skin color that had power over a majority with darker skin. How did that minority maintain power? Through violence, or the threat of violence. Violence became a tool for some people to have power over other people. Now, what does that have to do with men's violence against women? Well, it's a comparison, and the comparison is this. For much of human history, humans have lived in societies with a high degree of equality between women and men. Researchers tell us that in those societies with a high degree of equality between women and men, there was very little violence, little or no violence. It was only about 8,000 or 10,000 years ago, not long, because humans have been around hundreds of thousands of years, but only in the past 8,000 or 10,000 years, we've seen the development of male-dominated societies, societies where men had power over women. And in those societies, we see the birth of violence. Violence against women, violence among men, violence against children. Within that, in an individual relationship, some men will use violence to have power over their wife, over their girlfriend. So a police officer will get a call, and you go to a home, and you'll see that a woman has been beat up. And you'll say, what happened? And you may hear the most stupid thing. She may say, oh, my husband, he didn't like how dinner was cooked. My husband didn't like how his shirt was ironed. And you know, wait, you got punched because of dinner? It's not because of dinner. He's using that as an excuse. But what he is doing, he's using violence as a tool to have power over her. Just like if I was going to build a table, I would take out tools. He's using violence as a tool. He may not be a violent man. He may be your friend. He may be a neighbor. He may be maybe a workmate. But in that relationship, he is using violence to have power, to have control over her. Now, some people think, okay, yes, I understood that in the past we had a male-dominated society, but don't we have a society now with a high degree of equality between women and men? Hasn't this changed? Well, we still live in a world in which men make more money than women. We still live in a world in which men control most levels of politics. We live in a world in which our political leaders are men. And, oh my God, let's get rid of him. Anyway, most of our leaders are men. There he is again. Oh my God, get rid of him. Okay, we live in a world in which we train groups of men to be soldiers, to be warriors. We still live in a world where men control the economies of the world. And what a great job we're doing controlling the economies. Well, we still live in a world in which our biggest heroes are men. Where men are supposed to, not have to work at home while the woman does all the work at home. Where women get harassed at work. We still live in a world where we have job ghettos, where women are paid less, where women are less respected. We live in a world in which, when you go up the corporate ladder, you see more men at the top. And women, they're still on the side. Men are doing the important work, and women are cheering men on. And we sexualize this. We say that the man who has power over a woman, sexual power over a woman, is the man to be admired. And in our society, this becomes what we now call rape culture. That we have images in advertising, images in our movies, TV, that glamorize rape. And this is the overall conditions in our society. Men still have power over women, and within that, some men learn to use violence to have control over women, to have power over women. Now, that basic idea is the idea that feminist women and women's activists have been putting forward for years. That the cause of men's violence is inequality, is men's power over women. And as a man, I think that's true. As a man, even though as a man, I think it's wrong. Now, why do I think it's wrong? It's very simple. It's not because I feel guilty for what someone else has done. I feel angry. I feel angry that the women I love, the women I care about, the women I respect, have to live in the fear of violence. So as a man, as men, I think it's critical that we speak out against the violence. As a man, I think it's critical that we understand that we men should no longer have power over women. Because as soon as one group has power over another group, we have violence. So the first cause of men's violence is that we have lived in societies of men's power, men's control. And within that, some men use violence as a tool to maintain their power within a marriage, within a relationship, at the workplace. But I want to tell you something. The actual story is more complicated than this. It's more complicated. From a very early age, think of how we raise boys to be men. From a very early age, we say to boys, you will be strong, you will be powerful, you will be in control, you will make a lot of money, you will never show weakness, you will have all the answers, you will show no feelings, except maybe anger, it's okay, and no other feelings. You will get lots of sex, you will be invincible, you will never cry, on and on and on. Now, on the one hand, we say this will prepare you for power in a society where men have power. And we do all these things to prepare men, prepare boys, to feel powerful, to feel strong and in control, to be warriors, to be fighters, to take the pain, to never complain. Well, of course, to look like that. This is my other job. I am a Kaufman. And of course, to stand alone as a rugged individual. Because men don't need help. So these ideas of manhood are impossible for any man to live up to. None of us can live up to that. Because the idea that you will always be strong and powerful and in control and have all the answers and not show weakness is impossible for any man to live up to. And so we set up men for failure. We make it impossible for men to live up to these expectations. And so when we can't live up to them, we become obsessed. Am I manly enough? It becomes an obsession. And when we don't live up to those demands of manhood, we humiliate. We humiliate boys and men. We say, you're not a real man. We say, act like a man. We say, to the little boy, big boys don't cry. Don't be weak. Don't be a girl. Don't be a sissy. We make fun of men who are not acting manly enough. But the truth is, none of us can live up to these ideals of manhood. So what happens is that it tears men apart. It tears men apart. And what do I mean by that? It was very easy. Men die younger than women. Men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Men are more likely to be in prison than women. Men are more likely to be addicted to alcohol and other drugs than women. Men often don't have close friends that they can talk about their feelings. Men are often distant from their own children. This is a very sad story. But it's a story of men's lives. It's a story of our lives because the ways that we have defined my power, and your power, and your power, we can't live up to it. None of us can live up to those ideas. So how is this linked to violence? Well, for some men, when they feel like I'm not a man enough, they drink, or they get sad, or they try to make more money, or they show off. But for some men, to prove they're a real man, they use violence. They use violence. Remember I said they use violence to have power over a woman or over another man. But this is a paradox because they're also using violence because they feel like they don't have power. They feel like I'm not a real man. And so to prove they're a man, they use violence. Very strange. They're using some men will use violence because they have power, and at the same time because they feel I'm not powerful enough. And that also explains why many men don't speak out against the violence. Sometimes when police go and investigate a report of a gang rape, the story is always the same. There's a few perpetrators, and then there's other men who are just watching, not saying anything. Why? Those men are too scared to speak out. And why are they scared? They're not actually scared for their own safety. They're scared that the other men will think you're not a real man. It's the same thing at work. Someone at work tells a sexist joke, tells a rape joke. And men will be hearing this and you'll think this joke is not right. It may be technically a funny joke, it may be clever, but you know that joke is actually not funny, because rape is not funny. But men won't say anything. Why? Because they want to be one of the boys. They want the other men to think, oh, Michael's a real man too. Men are scared. Isn't it strange? We've said from birth, you will be strong, powerful, in control, fearless, and yet men are terrified. We're terrified about not being real men. And some men will use violence to prove they're real men, and many others will use violence, will be silent about that violence because they are scared that they will look like not real men. So what does this tell us about education? What does this tell us about speaking out? What does that tell us about the leadership role of police officers in ending the violence? Well, I think there are several things to be said here. First of all, as women and men, as mothers and fathers, as brothers and sisters, as sons and daughters, as members of a community, I believe that all of us, men and women, have a responsibility now to speak out with one voice in support of equality. To speak out with one strong voice to say, in our Brazil, and in my Canada, in your Brazil, and in my Canada, we need a future in which men and women are totally equal, where we have the same possibilities, the same responsibilities, where no one is a second-class citizen. We need to speak out about that. Where we have the same possibilities, the same responsibilities, where no one is a second-class citizen. We need to speak out about that. We also need to understand that some women and some men face multiple barriers to equality. Not only might a woman face a barrier because she's a woman, but she might face barriers, or he might face barriers, because of the color of his skin, because of his sexual orientation, because of his religion. It could be many things. We as citizens, as people who care about our co-workers, really need to speak out in support of equality. So that's where it starts. That's where it starts. We as men must speak out, particularly. Why? Because remember at the beginning, men still control the police. Men still control governments. Men still control the media, with one exception we're going to hear about in a minute, from South Africa. But by and large, men still are in power. So it's critical that men speak out. And police officers have a particular role to play. For the simple reason, you are authority figures. You represent the law. And I don't just mean the words of the law. You represent the spirit of the law. And so the spirit of the law in Brazil says this will be a country without violence against women. This will be a country of equality, of fairness. And so if we're going to represent the spirit of the law, and if you police officers are leaders within that, then it's critical that men speak out. But it's not only out there, it's also within the police force. Because a police force is it's a microcosm. It's a small example of the society as a whole. So if there's sexism in the society as a whole, if there's violence in society as a whole, if there's sexual harassment in the society as a whole, of course there's going to be those things within a police force. Of course. It's no different from the rest. But it means that police officers as leaders out there have a particular responsibility in here to make sure that the example you are setting is the example you want other Brazilians to take up and to carry. So, let me also talk, though, about the White Ribbon Campaign, which I see some of you are wearing. That's very nice. This is an example of public education that's been taken up by communities, by police forces, by, well, diverse groups all around the world. In 1991, three of us, just three of us, three men, started this campaign. It quickly spread across Canada, and now it's spread to, we think, 80 or 90 countries around the world. The basic idea of the White Ribbon Campaign is most men don't commit violence in their relationships, but most, as I said, have been silent. And because of our silence, we allow the violence to continue. So this is an education campaign, a public education campaign, an education campaign within workplaces to raise awareness, but in particular to encourage men to speak out. When men wear a white ribbon, I don't have one, but let me show you how easy it is to start a white ribbon campaign. Make a quick white ribbon. Not nice, but that's an ugly one. Okay, there's my white ribbon. That's how easy it is to start a white ribbon campaign. But it's actually not so easy, because when I wear a white ribbon, it's not because I'm only saying violence against women is bad. Of course it's bad. When I wear a white ribbon, I'm making a promise. I'm making a pledge. I'm taking an oath. And that oath is, I will not be silent, I will not excuse violence against women, and I will take action to bring it to an end. So it's making a promise. We also started it as a real one. There we go. A real one. There we go. Okay. And much nicer. Much more elegant. One reason it's spread around the world is that it is a decentralized campaign. What we mean is there's no worldwide membership. There's barely any contact. It's just an idea that's now gone around the world. And it's gone around the world and it looks very different. So let me just skip through this because we don't have much time. But I just want to show you some pictures from around the world. Here in Brazil, Carnival, there's white ribbon. So the idea is we go to where the men is. It's a campaign, it's education to go where the men is, where the men are. In Namibia, in Southwest Africa, these men were rallying outside of their parliament to support a new law that for the first time was going to make rape in marriage a crime. In Lebanon, just a public display to get people to stop and talk. This is a wrestling tournament in Pakistan. You can see it's just whatever people think they can do to reach the men and the boys. In China, people signing a pledge, a promise, not to commit, condone, or remain silent about violence against women. A rally in Russia. A boy giving a ribbon to a street vendor in Cambodia, explaining to this man about how he should speak out against violence against women. Students in Mongolia. This is a police officer, like you, in Guatemala. Actors in China. This is an Air Force plane in Australia, where the Air Force is supporting this campaign, and they've put the white ribbon on some of their planes. South Africa. I don't know, any idea what city that might be? Durban, okay, it's in South Africa. And I believe Nelson Mandela actually led a march once that was a white ribbon march. Anyway, Nepal, around the world, even in Canada there's different groups. There's a Muslims for White Ribbon. So around the world, and you can see, and this is important when we're doing education, do you see these images? They're all positive images, aren't they? If you were to go to a very smart advertising firm here in Brazil and say, make us a poster about violence against women, I can tell you what the poster would look like. It'd be a poster of a woman with a black eye, right? These posters, they don't work. They have shock value, but they don't change people. Research around the world says what changes men are positive images. And these are positive images about men speaking out against the violence. Men wanting a life free of violence. Using images in sports, but talking about the ability of men to make a difference. And so working within the police force, and I'm going to wrap up here, but working within the police force, I think the language we need to use is positive language. How we can have a police force that embodies the best of who we are. That we want to be one step ahead of the rest of society. Because if we're not, police officers will not be trusted. If you're not one step ahead, people will say, oh, they're just in it for themselves, they're just whatever. But for the police to be trusted and respected, you know this, I actually believe you need to be one step ahead. I believe that when it comes to violence against women, it's critical that our police officers represent the best of who we are. And so what does that mean? That means to encourage positive education. Not just, oh, don't do this, wagging a finger. But say to your fellow officers, particularly to the men in police forces, we invite you to speak out against violence against women. We invite you in your workplace to work to end sexual harassment and sexist jokes. We invite you to promote to give equal opportunities to women officers. We invite you to speak out in your community. We invite you to be a leader in your community. So that positive message to fellow officers. And I believe that when it comes to violence against women, this is actually a problem that we can bring to an end. Now, I'm not naive. I know humans, there will always be some violence. But I believe we can drastically reduce this. I believe we can drastically bring men's violence against women almost to an end. And so as a social problem, it becomes over. But to do that, we need laws, we need community action, we need campaigns like White Ribbon, but we need police officers speaking out. We need you making a difference. And that difference can't just be in words. It has to be by example. And that means within the ranks, within the forces, making sure that there is no violence against women within your police forces. There is no sexual harassment. I think you can do it. And as you do it, when you do it, what you will be doing is bringing about a better Brazil for women. That is true. But you will also be bringing about a better Brazil for men. And most important of all, you'll be bringing about a Brazil and a world that is far better for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you very much.